This is CBC Here and Now.
It won't mean an awful lot.
What? Not another fixed term. That right away is a red flag.
There's no doubt in the condition the province is in, we need the money, we need cash.
It means that this year we will more than likely post a surplus and immediately next year go back to a deficit.
The deal that has everyone talking. Tonight, we're digging into the Atlantic Accord. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Carolyn Stokes.
And I'm Anthony Germain. A day after the Premier announced the oil revenue sharing agreement has been renewed, a big question is, will the province benefit in the long term? Or, as some critics ask, is this a repeat of the regrettable Churchill Falls contract from the 1960s?
The agreement announced yesterday has Ottawa giving $2.5 billion to the province.
The deal stretches 38 years. That's well into the future. So, is this a good deal or not? Well, that's what Here and Now's Katie Breen has been looking into. She joins us now live from our newsroom. So, Katie, what did you discover?
Well, Wade Locke, MUN's head economist, says the future of the province looks better because of this deal. He says there's no way you can take $2.5 million off the province's net debt and characterize that as a bad thing. But he warns that we still have a lot to pay off. Yesterday at the announcement, the federal government swooped in with guaranteed revenue. Locke believes Ottawa did that to help the province stay off bankruptcy. Newfoundland and Labrador is billions in debt. Right now, almost $15 billion. And Locke says the federal government tries to keep provinces from going too far in the red.
It's the only thing that makes any sense. If you sort of think about it for a second, we have the highest per capita revenue in the country, bar none. So you're taking money from other provinces through the federal government, transferring it to this province, who happens to have the highest per capita revenue in the country. So it's hard to understand why you would do that, other than the fact that you're exposing the rest of the provinces to a risk if we were to go get in financial trouble.
So the province's finances are dependent on oil and gas, and that's where we get most of our revenues from. So you spoke with one industry insider today, right?
Yeah, that's right. The former CEO of Noya is raising concerns about what this deal does or doesn't do for development. Bob Cadigan says there are hundreds of billions of dollars worth of oil royalties just waiting to be extracted from the offshore, potentially thousands of jobs. But he says environmental assessments are just taking too long and that the power to proceed lies with the federal government.
Well, on one hand, we're celebrating, getting $2.5 billion to help us survive, which is important. On the other hand, we're doing nothing within this announcement to fix the problems that are delaying this activity and may mean that some of this resource is never developed and some of these jobs will never happen.
While Cadigan has some criticisms, Locke says this is a good deal, and whatever you think of it, this will be the deal that Ball will be campaigning on. He's already announced that there will be election before the summer. Anthony?
Thank you, Katie. That's our Katie Breen reporting live from our newsroom. Going to stay with this story. Some of the Premier's language last night was reminiscent of former Premier Danny Williams. He renegotiated the Atlantic Accord 14 years ago, so compare for yourself.
We got it. We got it.
Danny Williams met supporters at the airport when he came back from Ottawa with a deal worth billions. In Williams' deal, the province got $2 billion up front. Now, the cash was an advance to cover benefits related to oil royalties over 8 years. And if the province remained a so-called have-not province after 8 years, the deal would have renewed. But it didn't because we had become a have province by then instead. Now, the total net value of the deal was $2.6 billion. So it's kind of like winning the Set for Life lottery and taking the cash in a lump sum.
And working together on the Atlantic Accord, ladies and gentlemen, we got it right.
In the deal that Premier Dwight Ball announced yesterday, the province will get nearly $2 billion. It's over the next 11 years. That's 60% of that money by 2030, 11 years from now. The total deal worth $3.3 billion over 38 years, but the province has to pay back $800 million. Now, the total net value of this deal, when you do all the math, is $2.5 billion. So if this were the Set for Life lottery, it's choosing to take the weekly payments.
And former Tory Premier Brian Peckford is also weighing in on this deal tonight. Peckford is comparing it to the controversial 65-year contract the province signed with Hydro-Quebec back in 1969 to develop the upper Churchill River, a contract that delivers huge profits for Quebec but only marginal benefits to Newfoundland and Labrador.
The first thing I think that any Newfoundlander or Labradorian reading this deal would say, what? Not another fixed term. Here we have a fixed term of 37 years, out to 2057. That, right away, is a red flag.
Now, the former premier isn't the only one examining this deal closely. In about 30 minutes, we have an accountant and an economist who also happens to be in charge of the NDP. We'll get their take on the new renewed accord.
And in other news tonight, police say they don't think a fire that leveled a cabin and killed a 59-year-old man near Southern Arm is suspicious. Springdale RCMP were called to the cabin fire just before 1 a.m. on Sunday. The man was found dead inside the cabin. He was the only person in there at the time. Police say the investigation is ongoing and the cause is still undetermined.
Like in your education in class. You're too interested in your cell phones and texting.
You should be able to bring it to school, but you should have it in your backpack until school ends.
A school in Harbour Grace bans cell phones and then backtracks. More on that controversial policy at St. Francis School coming up.
Well, I'm sure you noticed two things. First, the temperature much cooler today. If you take a look at this, the 24-hour temperature change in St. John's, 14-degree difference from what we were sitting at yesterday around this time. Otherwise, between 7 and 12 degrees for most of the island. And the other thing you'll notice is how windy it is today. Here's your sustained winds, 40, gusting upwards of about 60 kilometers per hour for parts of the Avalon. We're seeing sustained winds up through St. Anthony at 48 kilometers per hour as well. Now, the thing today is we're going to see a little bit of relief with those winds, with these clear skies. They're going to stay clear as we head through the overnight. But our next weather maker is down off the coast of the U.S. That's headed our way as we head through the next couple of days. And it looks like a pretty significant storm with some wind warnings already in place and some winter storm warnings up through Labrador. I'll have all those details coming up with your full forecast.
Former Premier Kathy Dunderdale says in hindsight, more information about the Muskrat Falls project would have been helpful. Dunderdale took the stand at today's inquiry and, like others before her, she testified that she too was in the dark about a lot, except when it comes to one contentious number. Cease Hare reports.
There was a long list of things Kathy Dunderdale didn't know about. She didn't know that the contingency was spent a half a year before the loan guarantee was signed with Ottawa. She never saw a report that said it was too low. She didn't see reports from Ottawa's independent engineer, and she did not know that the multi-billion-dollar Muskrat Falls project that her government sanctioned wasn't actually a full sanction. It was a conditional sanction. But Dunderdale says she did know when the loan guarantee was signed that a new estimate was in. She knew it had risen to $6.5 billion, up from $6.2 billion used at sanction.
And I can't do it, sir, because I truly believe, that I knew it was 6.5. Now, Mr. Learmouth, I heard the testimony yesterday, and I heard a lot of things that are really puzzling to me.
What may be puzzling is that other former cabinet ministers have a different story. Paul Davis, Derek Daly, and Tom Marshall have testified that they knew nothing of 6.5. Dunderdale says she can't recall who told her or who was in the room at the time, but she stresses she would have shared it with cabinet colleagues.
If you knew, isn't it obvious that you would have told that information, reported that information to the other cabinet members?
Absolutely.
Dunderdale says as premier, she relied on government staff and cabinet ministers to keep her in the loop. She admits she's disappointed she didn't get the right information, but she maintains that oversights were put in place and maybe they weren't enough. Cease Hare, CBC News, St. John's.
Dunderdale says she didn't know a lot of the financial details of the project, but back when she was premier, it didn't stop her from criticizing the critics. Here she is at the PC's annual convention in 2012.
There are some who are not so sure, and they just aren't on the other side of the aisle. When we say we need the power to grow, they say we need to start managing decline. While we are talking of ramping up to seize the opportunities at our door, they are talking of ratcheting back. Where we have confidence, they have fear. While we are building, they are warning that the sky is falling. Instead of planning for a brighter future, they are willing to sit in the dark, but I'm not, and you're not, and we will not.
And former Finance Minister Tom Marshall testified yesterday that he wasn't told the estimated cost of Muskrat Falls had grown from $6.2 billion to $6.5 billion, and he didn't know the contingency of $368 million was not only too low, but was also exhausted before the loan deal was signed with Ottawa.
You can see this is not just a figure pulled out of the air like an extra $300 billion. This is based on a calculation. Do you agree?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It looks like a firm
Now,
number.
You never got this calculation sheet at all, right?
No, I saw this, I think,
Yeah.
a few days ago.
Now, are you saying you should have been made aware of that information?
Oh, I think if the contingency is wiped out, sure, of course.
And that would have been a material change that
Yes.
you,
Yes.
I'm going back to that meeting you had with Mr. Martin and Mr. Bone.
Yes,
You'd consider that to be a material change?
I do.
The court case of former real estate company owner Ann Squires has been delayed yet again. Squires faces charges of fraud, forgery, and breach of trust after Exit Realty on the Rock collapsed 3 years ago. Ann Squires has pleaded guilty to the charges she is facing, but her lawyer, Randy Piercy, says he's very close to reaching a plea deal with the Crown. Squires is accused of stealing money from Exit on the Rock, money that was supposed to be set aside in a trust fund. She's also accused of defrauding a payday loan type of company called Access Easy Funds. Squires allegedly used forged and fake sales agreements to get advances from the company. Squires did not appear in court today. Her case is scheduled to return to Supreme Court in 3 weeks.
Well, the numbers are up slightly, but biologists are still concerned about the health of northern cod stocks. Federal Fisheries released its latest cod stock assessment today. The amount of fish off eastern Newfoundland is improving, but the numbers are still in the critical zone. The spawning biomass is close to half of where it needs to be, according to DFO. That's up from last year when it was at 37%.
Conditions seem to be favorable for cod right now. Definitely capelin has been tied to cod, and there's been a little uptick in capelin in recent years, so that might be part of it.
Jody Wilson-Raybould's time in the Liberal caucus could be running out tonight. Liberal cabinet members are weighing whether it's time for her to go. There's a special meeting of the Liberal caucus called for this evening.
Egregious issue that people are trying to wrap their minds around is the issue of the tape and taping somebody surreptitiously who was not aware of that.
Now, some Liberal MPs criticize Wilson-Raybould for deciding to record and then release a conversation with the country's top civil servant. She gave that 17-minute-long recording to the Commons Justice Committee last week. Now, Wilson-Raybould says it backs her claims that she was improperly pressured to avoid a criminal prosecution of SNC-Lavalin. Well, here at home, a school in Harbour Grace is already backing down on a controversial cell phone ban. Students at St. Francis had been told to leave their mobile devices at home. But as Here and Now's Stephen Miller reports, the school is already reconsidering that.
Yesterday was April Fool's Day, but students at St. Francis School in Harbour Grace found out that administration wasn't joking about the tech ban. Mobile phones, tablets, and other personal devices were no longer allowed on school premises. The school says it's because of behavioral issues and distractions.
They're not getting their education in class. They're too interested in their cell phones and texting, and it shouldn't be allowed in class.
I know one young fellow who's been taped and everything else. You know, these things are good, but I think they should be used at proper place at the proper time.
The ban was announced on Sunday via a Facebook post from the school. While it may be quite an adjustment for some students, Others, not so much.
He just got a cell phone about a week ago, and he took it to school Friday for the first time, and then the ban came out, so I thought that was great. I don't know if he'll agree.
You might be surprised to learn he does, at least while Grandma's around.
I think it's a really good idea because people that are older, they look up pretty inappropriate and bad stuff.
Most people I spoke to understood the problems that cell phones can cause in a classroom, but others wondered if forcing students to leave their technology at home was a step too far.
I'm a single parent. I have a daughter that leaves school on the bus each day, and she calls me each day on the way home from bus. And she says, okay, I'm going in the house now. Okay, I'm in the house. I'm feeling safe. Doors locked. Everything's good.
The lack of communication is an anxiety she shares with her 13-year-old daughter.
Practically to be safe outside of school, and to go to Splash or a friend's house, you can't go to the office and ask for that because that should be planned outside of school, but sometimes you can't predict that.
Now it seems the policy that had everyone talking might have been rushed out the gate. After just one day in effect, the school announced it will be reversing the ban, at least until they do further consultation with district staff, school council, and the broader school community. Stephen Miller, CBC News, Harbor Grace.
Really big part of my cancer treatment and recovery was knowing that that part of my life after cancer was going to be okay or taken care of.
Factoring in fertility. It's a reality for young female cancer patients.
We take you to a unique fundraiser coming up.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. Bonus deadline is midnight, Friday, April 5th. Order now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
Well, yesterday in St. John's, went to the car in a t-shirt, and this morning it was back to the old winter coat. What a change.
Yeah, it was a t-shirt, then rain jacket, then winter coat, yeah.
That rain was really coming down last night, too.
Sure was. Yeah, we did see quite a bit of rain last night, but yeah, the temperature change. We'll take a look at the numbers again if you missed it a little bit earlier. 14-degree difference in St. John's from what we were at yesterday. And then still close to 7 to 11 degrees anywhere else on the island. And then 9-degree difference up through Happy Valley Goose Bay. And that temperature actually increased for Lab City, 5 degrees by the time today rolled around. But, those temperatures now still sitting in the in the single digits on the plus side of the mercury, -3 in Happy Valley Goose Bay, and Lab City sitting at -4 right now. Those temperatures are going to dip as we head through the night tonight again, and should stay quite clear through the overnight. We're still under that big ridge of high pressure, but these winds are going to stay strong tonight. Not a whole lot in the way of precipitation happening. We will start to see some cloud cover move in towards the morning hours for Labrador, and a slight chance of a few flurries as well. But overall, sitting in the minus single digits again, between -3 and -5 overnight tonight. Some southwesterly winds, 30 gusting 50, so they're going to ease slightly from what we're seeing right now, and then ease even more as we head through the morning hours tomorrow and shift to more southerly winds, but then pick right back up again as we head into the afternoon tomorrow. Same thing up through Labrador, Lab City again, -4 tonight with that chance of flurries right through to Happy Valley Goose Bay. Otherwise, we should stay clear along the coast of Labrador with winds shifting from westerly to southwesterly, and then picking up a little bit for about 30 to 50 kilometers per hour along the coast. And those southwest winds as you head a little bit further south. Now, here's a look at what we're expecting into the afternoon tomorrow. We will start to see some cloud cover push in. There's that shift in that wind, some more southeasterly flow. And with that, we've got that wreck house area in a warning right now. And then the system continues to move through. So right now it looks like we're going to start to see things start off as freezing rain for parts of the southwest and southern coast, and then shift over to, or at least transition through to rain and spread along the island. Otherwise, that is a snow event up through Labrador, and a significant one at that. So we do have a couple of warnings in place. Winter storm watches from Happy Valley Goose Bay through to Cartwright and up through north through Rigolet. Otherwise, we're in winter storm warnings already for the southeastern Labrador. And then we've got wind warnings in place along the coast of Newfoundland, with gusts upwards of about 130 kilometers per hour, and then the wreck house area could see gusts near 170 kilometers per hour. So here's a look at your temperature. It's going to be sitting likely around 8 degrees tomorrow, and that's because we should see some sunshine to start, and then we'll start to see that rain move in. Similar temperatures through parts of central Grand Falls, Windsor, -8 degrees, Harbour Breton sitting at 4. Again, with that rain moving in late day. Along the coast, that's where it gets messy. So southeasterly winds gusting upwards of 100 to 130 kilometers per hour in the afternoon and evening hours, and sitting around 6 degrees to start. We'll see temperatures dip and then climb again. So that's where we're going to see that start off as snow up through the northern peninsula as well. Could see about 5 centimeters of snow before that changes over to rain, and then 20 to 30 centimeters of snow for the Straits. So a significant amount of snow. Same for Happy Valley Goose Bay and Lab City, sitting around 5 to 10 centimeter range. And then those winds out of the south. So we're looking at snow and blowing snow, and it looks like it's going to continue through the day on Thursday and even into Friday for parts of Labrador, but I'll have all those details coming up. Carolyn?
Thanks, Ashley. Well, when Amanda Hancock was just 31 years old, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. But with chemotherapy comes other factors to consider, like fertility. That's because cancer treatment can sometimes affect a woman's ability to have children. And it was during this time when Hancock was introduced to a program called Fertile Futures Power of Help. And this weekend, Hancock held a fundraiser for the group that helped her.
Feel free to scream at me because the lactic acid will burn.
So we're just having core and coffee. This is a fundraiser for Fertile Future, a national charity dedicated to young adults diagnosed with cancer, helping preserve their fertility before or during their treatment.
No!
I think people get a little bit tired of just different causes asking, with a hands out for money. So Katie Wadden and I got together and we wanted to give something back. So we just kind of pooled all the resources. So we had Sandy Bennett from Empower Fitness, and Rocket donated the space, and we had some of the physicians and physiotherapists and medical residents come out who kind of volunteered their time to talk to everyone in attendance here this morning about some of these issues. So it really came together nicely, and in that way people are giving, but they're also getting something back by way of fitness and information.
Here we go. Nice rotation.
It's definitely a cause near and dear to my heart. I was a recipient of Fertile Future's Power of Hope program in 2014. I traveled to Ottawa for egg freezing, and yeah, it was just a really big part of my cancer treatment and recovery, was knowing that part of my life after cancer was going to be okay or taken care of. Well, the fundraising aspect of it is nice because it's always nice to give to charity, and also spreading the awareness about Fertile Future, because not a lot of people are aware that when you're facing a cancer diagnosis as someone of childbearing age, there are options for family planning, and it requires here in Newfoundland for women to travel out of province. It's just really nice to see people come together and form that sense of community and have like a safe space to talk about these issues that are sometimes hard to talk about.
3, 2, and round 1 complete. Have a little drink.
Well, Saturday on Coach's Corner, hosts Don Cherry and Ron McLean paid tribute to a young hockey player from this province. Jasmine Jamie Walters was killed in a crash on the West Coast last Monday. Now, it happened near the St. Fintan's turnoff. The 19-year-old played with the Port aux Basques Minor Hockey Association before graduating from high school, and that was just last year. Here's what Don and Ron had to say about her.
Port aux Basques, Newfoundland, Don, heartbroken tonight and this week.
Yes, yes, Jamie, I call her, there she is there. I call her Jasmine, but her dad was called Jamie Walters. Young girl, she was a model for everybody in Port aux Basques. Young female, I guess all hockey players like that. She was killed in an accident. She was only 19, but she played for played for so many teams there. I can't name them all. But I'll tell you one thing, boys, she was a great model, and I know Trudy and Jamie, they're feeling awful right now, but boy, she looks terrific there, and only 19. That was a tough deal.
God bless her.
There is no other document in existence signed by Newfoundland that has within it the ability to see this province truly grow and prosper.
Former Premier Brian Peckford was the first to negotiate the Atlantic Accord with the federal government back in 1985. The deal is widely considered an important economic milestone for the province's development, and tonight he's weighing in on the deal signed by Premier Dwight Ball.
I don't like it very much at all. I think it's a bad deal, and I'm sad to say that. I would love to be able to say that they have enhanced the Atlantic Accord from what I signed, but that's not the case.
What don't you like about this deal?
The first thing I think that any Newfoundlander or Labradorian reading this deal would say, what? Not another fixed term. Here we have a fixed term of 37 years, out to 2057. That, right away, is a red flag. No reopeners, no nothing. So that if the price of oil goes up in the future, we don't get any extra for that. If the federal government makes more money through their 8% interest in Hibernia, we don't get any of that extra money. Ours is fixed for all time until the agreement is over in 2057. That's a bad deal.
And a lot can happen between now and 2057. Who knows what the landscape will be like?
Well, you know, if there's a war in the Middle East or there's more disruptions in Venezuela or whatever around the world, the price of oil could go up. What we should have negotiated was a floor where we couldn't get less, but we had the opportunity to get more if the federal government got more. That seems to be fair.
Mm-hmm. And you say that any Newfoundlander and Labrador looking at this deal and seeing this fixed term, would shake their heads. Why are we so sensitive about that?
Because we lost so much on the Upper Churchill by signing a fixed deal. Every independent analysis has shown that we are losing on the Upper Churchill anywhere from $500 to $1 billion a year in economic rent because we signed a fixed deal with no reopeners. That's the reason.
So when you look at this deal, do you see the Upper Churchill deal? You see similarities between the two?
When there's a fixed deal with no reopeners so that you have no upside, then that looks very much like the haunting Upper Churchill, which we've been living with ever since as Newfoundlanders and Labradorians.
How does this deal, do you think, compare to the deal that Danny Williams signed?
Well, Williams tried to get it enhanced. So in that context, what Williams signed was better than what Ball has signed. There's no question about it. I mean, and the federal government has an election too, so it was in their own two best interests to try to get this thing off the table. Remember, latest polls show that the Liberals in Ottawa are starting to lose in Atlantic Canada because of the SNC-Lavalin thing. So I think it was in the Fed's best interests and the province having the election to their best interests. So politics played too big a role in this.
Can you take me back to that day in 1985 when you signed the deal? What were your hopes for the future then?
I thought that if anything in the future, because we had produced such a really good base from which to negotiate, we could enhance the accord, not try to be on the defensive and just keep what we got. Just imagine the Premier of Newfoundland saying yesterday, and we're still going to get all the revenues or all the royalties. Oh, did you think about that we weren't going to get them? Were you willing to even consider us not getting them? So we're on the defensive all the time.
This deal seems to have gotten you pretty riled up. Would you agree?
Absolutely. This gets me really, really riled up. And because we work so hard on getting in there, that oil must be treated the same as it's on land. That today we are a half province only because of that oil revenue, almost $1 billion last year. We would be a have-not province over and over again if we didn't have those oil revenues. So my argument is this: if we can do it once, can't we do it twice? Can't we improve upon it over time? Don't be defensive. Go on the offensive and try to improve the accord over what was signed. Not be defensive and bring other things into it. That's what really upsets me.
Okay. Well, Mr. Peckford, thank you so much for speaking with us about this.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, the Premier's office got in touch with Here Now this afternoon to respond to that interview that Carolyn did. It says taking the revenue stream was a better deal than buying Ottawa's stake in the Hibernia project. It says the guaranteed revenue avoids, quote, the uncertainty that comes with volatile oil prices, and that if any disputes arise between the province and the feds, there is an arbitration process to deal with any disputes. Well, people in St. John's who are opposed to plans for a for-profit emergency shelter are somewhat relieved. City Council has voted against changing the rules that would have allowed the business to open in the centre of the city. City businessman Leonard Fair proposed the idea. He spent $1 million to buy the former Salvation Army building on Adams Avenue to house the shelter. But last evening, Council rejected the application. Its regulations for transition houses only cover government and non-profit companies, but not private businesses.
Well, keeping with the city, council has given the go-ahead to spend tens of millions of dollars on construction projects. This year's capital budget is $24 million, and most of that money will be spent on fixing roads. But the city will also build more parking spaces at Bowring Park, and it's looking at creating a left-hand turn at a high-traffic area, the Mount Scio Road area and Allendale Road intersection.
Really busy place with the Marine Institute and other through traffic going from the east to the probably from Higgins Line out to Thorburn Road. So that's creates some congestion there, and is also a safety issue. So I'm hopeful that council will support installation of the left turning arrows there when we reconsider it at our next meeting.
And a pilot in Nova Scotia is helping some young people spread their wings. Dimitri Neonakis runs a program called Dream Wings, and over the past 18 months, he's taken hundreds of children with special needs out for a spin. We tagged along for a flight this weekend with 11-year-old Captain Luke Reddick.
Captain Luke, can I have a radio check, please?
Captain Luke, I read you 5x5. Windsor 19020.
Thanks, copy that. Hi, my name is Luke Reddick. I'm visually impaired.
I think we're ready to fly, buddy. And off we go, buddy.
Woohoo!
My name is Dimitri Neonakis, and I am the pilot for a little initiative that we run for children with disabilities. We call Dream Wings. I wanted to share my love for flying and aviation in general with children with disabilities, flying a small airplane, fly in the cockpit of a small airplane, learn how airplanes work, get involved in the cockpit together with me to be my co-pilot. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right, you have control. This kid is flying by an extra feel. Yes, he is visually impaired, but yet he can fly an airplane executing my commands. I've never seen anything like it. And we flew together many times, and every time I fly with him, he's funny, he's delightful, a great pilot.
It's a pretty nice view out the window, eh?
Yeah. You can see it, can you? You're doing awesome today, man.
Woohoo!
Yeah, level off. Why children with disabilities? Well, why not? They don't have many opportunities. Some of them, their physical conditions are such that, you know, they don't have the luxury of going playing on the playground or ride a bike. So we give them the opportunity to be a pilot for an hour, fly in the cockpit, and give them this unique opportunity, which is of course free. It's funded by us, and it's a lot of fun.
When did you start Dream Wings?
Well, you were one of my first kids that I flew with Dream Wings, don't you remember? So far in the 18 months that I have been doing this, about 350 children in over 250 flights. Some of them, they're skeptical. There's a certain element of fear there. There's a certain element of anxiety to try something new. But once we get up in the air, they love it. A lot of them come back. But every time I set up 5 flights out of Halifax, I can't wait for Saturday or Sunday to come to go flying with those kids.
You know what's really cool about me? I'm really steady and well balanced with a lot of stuff.
I want to raise awareness about the parents and the children and their medical conditions. A lot of beautiful stories come out of this little initiative that we have. You know, the children and the parents are the real heroes. I don't know how they do it, you know, but it seems so easy for them. They tend to their children 24 hours a day. They make it look easy. I'm in awe with all of them. Well, Luke, man, I tell you, you're the best pilot I know. You know why?
Why?
You're unique. Actually, it wasn't that bad for being so windy, bud.
Nope.
We're gonna do a nice landing. All right?
Yeah, I didn't think the wind was too bad this time.
I think you earned this. It's your wings.
When's the next flight gonna be?
Stitch them into your jacket. This is yours, bud.
Whoa! How exciting is that?
Wow.
Smile says it all, right?
Fantastic smile. I like that too. When's the next flight?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Nice story.
Yeah.
They have a windfall of $2.5 billion that will show up in the books this year. It means that this year we will more than likely post a surplus in our provincial budget and immediately next year go back to a deficit.
Crunching the numbers.
We get an accountant and economist who also happens to be the leader of the NDP to examine the new Atlantic Accord.
We have achieved a new guaranteed revenue stream that will deliver $2.5 billion to our province.
When you divvy up billions of dollars scattered over the future, it comes out to about $68 million per year over the next 4 decades, more or less. So is this the great achievement that Premier Dwight Ball says it is? Well, we're going to burrow into some of the aspects of this renewed accord with our next 2 guests. Alison Coffin is an economist who is also the new leader of the NDP. And Larry Short is a chartered professional accountant with Short Financial. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right, so according to this new agreement, $2.5 billion, the Premier says one of the important aspects of this also has to do with the debt. Let's take a look.
That revenue stream immediately reduces the provincial net debt by approximately $5,000 for every Newfoundlander and Labradorian. And in total, our provincial net debt will decrease by 16% as a result of this agreement.
So, Larry, let me start with you. You're the accountant in all this. Explain this to me. So we're going to get $2.5 billion, so we can actually say that we're no longer in debt by that amount?
So under accounting principles, without getting too technical about it, this is the accrual accounting method, which means that you can realize a gain or an obligation that somebody's going to pay you money all in 1 year. And that's what the provincial government is planning to do. So they're planning to show that they have a windfall of $2.5 billion that will show up in the books this year, even though we won't collect it for a long period of time. So one of the difficulties we as accountants have and financial planners have is enabling people to understand their money and understand exactly what that means. It means that this year we will more than likely post a surplus in our provincial budget and immediately next year go back to a deficit.
Because we're taking $2.5 billion that we don't really have until the year 2050 something, right?
Right. So it's the same thing as if you had a mortgage on a house and your parent came to you and said, I'm going to give you $50,000 against your mortgage, and you went to the bank and said, I have a $50,000 obligation, it's going to be paid to me, so my net mortgage is going to be reduced by that $50,000. The same way that this, in this case, is $2.5 billion.
Because the thing though is if my father or parents say I'm going to give you that money, I'm going to give you that every year, I think if I went to the bank and said, okay, take this off my debt, the bank's not going to say, we'll write that off.
Yes, so the bank will recognize that the money's coming over time, but on accrual accounting, it says you can book it all in 1 year.
All right. Alison Coffin, what do you make of this? I mean, are we suddenly looking good?
No, not really. We still have lower oil prices than we had expected. We still have lots of obligations in terms of our expenditures, and this is only going to show up this year as a surplus, but next year we're not projected to have another surplus. We are expected to have another deficit, and I think that's supposed to go into 2023. So these accumulated deficits over time are only going to add to the net debt.
All right, so this just looks good for this year?
Well, no doubt. I mean, we're better off today than we were, Friday. But it is important that in the planning function, when we're looking further down the road, to make sure that we are reaching the goals that we need to reach over the next 10 to 15 years. This is a step in the right direction, but it's not a panacea. It's not solving all of our problems.
All right. Now, most Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, I think, when they think about the Atlantic Accord to the extent that we do, it has to do with offshore oil and making sure that Newfoundland and Labrador gets more of the cream, that we benefit from a resource which belongs to the province. Yesterday, Ottawa and the Premier threw hydroelectricity into this mix. Let's take a look.
We now have a clear commitment from the Government of Canada to examine the financial structure of Muskrat Falls. Together, we will achieve rate mitigation. And to that end, the Minister of Finance will travel here in our province within the matter of days to advance this work on rate mitigation.
So, Alison Coffin, what's your assessment of the decision to actually add Muskrat Falls into the Accord to the extent that it's actually in the Accord? What do you make of this?
Well, I think this is just political posturing at this point. Those two things are separate and distinct. I think that this is a bundling in preparation for an election. That's all that's happening right now.
All right. Now, so nonetheless, you'll have Mr. Morneau coming here on Friday. Should we be eager and anticipating that maybe Ottawa has some good news for us when it comes to what our electricity rates are going to be?
Well, we should hope so. If he's actually coming and if the Premier is saying that we should achieve rate mitigation, but we should also expect that if this is going to happen, the Finance Minister's coming with $744 million per year for the province, and that is a little incredulous.
Is that how much it's going to cost to actually make our rates stay more or less?
This is the numbers that I've heard most recently, yes.
Larry, what's your take on this? I mean, how big a piggy bank does Morneau have to show up with?
Well, a couple of things. One is he trying to completely mitigate the problem? And that is where that $700 million figure comes from. Or does it bring it to what is average for Atlantic Canada, which is is a number that's less than that $700 million.
Right.
But it is highly unusual to expect a finance minister to show up here and say, "Got nothing for you."
Right.
I mean, something has been hatched. It's a question of when are they revealing it.
All right, lots of politics ahead. Appreciate you coming on here and now this evening. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks.
Well, it's Tuesday, and that means it's time to meet another Weather Whiz kid.
Yeah, this time we are welcoming Janessa Howell to the club, and she is 11 years old from Gander. Look at that photo there. This is a little bit old, obviously, from
Is the
February.
snow still there?
Snow's still there.
Snow people have been very popular in all these drawings. Nice one.
They have, yeah. So, and then here's her photo.
Aww.
Yeah.
Hi, Janessa.
Yeah.
Grass behind you there. No snow in the photo.
That's right. So I think that was taken at the beginning of the school year, it looks like. But yeah, thank you so much for sending your drawing, and it was a good one. If you have any drawings that you'd like to send us, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca, and then with your name, your drawing, your photo, and your address, and I'll send you a postcard.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, so how's the long range looking?
Yeah, so we're going to see a mess, as I was mentioning, Wednesday night into Thursday. But taking a look at the future tracker, Wednesday night is when we'll see things change back over to snow in behind this system and through the day on Thursday for the West Coast and the South Coast as well. Labrador, you're just going to see everything stay as snow. And quite significant amount, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. We're looking at 20 to 30 centimeters by the time Thursday morning rolls around, and then even more so, as you can see, through the day on Thursday. Now, along the West Coast as well, it is still a little bit early, but we could see between 5 to 10 centimeters of snow in some areas, maybe even more, as that persists right into Friday morning. And these strong winds are going to continue through the day on Thursday as well. Now, temperatures are going to be cool again, between 1 to 3 degrees above zero for parts of central along the West Coast. Port aux Basques covering around -1. Towards eastern Newfoundland and the Avalon, we're looking at temperatures in the single digits. Mid-single digits, with that potential for some showers. That will happen in the morning, and then we should actually see some clearing skies through the afternoon. And again, those windy conditions up through Labrador continuing anywhere from 0 to -3, with more snow on the way. Now, the system takes its time moving off. It's going to stay offshore through Friday morning, but in behind that, we've got that more northerly flow. Southwesterly is for the island. That's why we're seeing those onshore flurries. Eventually, things will clear out, though, overnight on Friday, which is good news. And then some more cloud cover will move in through the day on Saturday. More of a mix of sun and cloud through the day before the next system rolls in. And this one looks like another snow event for parts of the island and up through Labrador as well. That will spread further east. Now, again, the agreement, it's still many days away, but where that rain-snow line reaches could mean we could see some snow for parts of the Avalon as well. So maybe don't put your shovels away just yet. But taking a look at the 5-day forecast, we're looking at temperatures around 8 degrees tomorrow. So that's certainly good news there. But then they're going to drop as we head towards the weekend. So windy conditions again continuing through Thursday and then into Saturday, either a rain or snow mix. Central Newfoundland between 0 and 3 degrees right through Sunday. Again, either rain or snow on Saturday, with flurries returning on Sunday, and then Western Newfoundland snow and windy on Thursday, with snow continuing right through Sunday, it looks like, or at least the potential as we hover between 0 and 1 degree. Eastern Labrador, 20 to 30 centimeters, windy conditions along the coast, potentially some blizzard conditions as well. Definitely keep an eye on the forecast there, and staying windy right through Friday. And then for Western Labrador, 5 to 10 centimeters tomorrow, snow and windy on Thursday, and then again staying windy through Friday. So let's look at your forecast. When I come back, I'll have your weather photo. Welcome back. Well, instead of guessing where this photo was taken, what do you see in the clouds?
Okay, a little psychological profile of
Yeah.
us. Right now, I see a map of Roncontre East.
That's where it is.
I see a really angry seagull diving into the water to get a fish.
Yeah, or an eel.
Yeah.
Or Ronald Reagan.
Oh,
But
jeez.
I don't know where that came from. But yeah, beautiful.
It is a great shot. Andy Baker captured this photo and sent it to us, and I had to share it with you all because I thought it was so great.
Love it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you so much for sending it in. If you have any weather photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Great.
That's show.
Yeah, that's it for Tuesday.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.